Now you guys come to this channel because you know I'm going to give you the real deal. I'm going to tell you what I think. I'm not some Ventrac fanboy. I'm not a yes man. I tell it how it is. I don't mince words. Ventrac really appreciates that. And that's why they sent me the brand new KC220 Stump Grinder to test back a few months ago. And unfortunately, the timing was not that great. I had just gone through 2 major surgeries within 4 days of each other, the second being an emergency surgery. That was back at the end of January. And I actually was on the phone with Ventrac while I was in the VA hospital in Wilmington, Delaware, getting the second surgery done. I love this equipment. I've been using it for 17 years now. Have 2 tractors, a 4200 and a 4500. This stuff is just awesome. This stump grinder has a much broader spectrum of things that it can do better than the old KC180. With this new design, there are no mirrors. You just look over the side of the tractor and you can actually see what you're doing. And I think it's pretty awesome. And with a recent design change that they made just before they sent this to me, this actually cuts deeper than the old KC180, which I believe the factory specs said it cut 6 inches below grade. This is 8. So 8 inches below grade is pretty darn nice. And I've done several stump grindings already where the customer wanted grading and seeding afterward, and to my delight, I found that making passes with this stump grinder versus the old one, I was able to grade over the stump area, and I never hit any high spots with the power rake. That usually didn't happen with the old style, simply because of the way that it worked. It would cover the work area in chips. This moves the chips off to this side, gets it completely out of the work area, so your work area is clean. You have a perfect view of the next pass. You just keep going and repeating and moving over, making another pass until you're finished, and just absolutely brilliant. This thing is super cool, absolutely love it. So if nothing else, you'll get a much better view of what you're cutting. Let me go through a list of things of why I think this new grinder is so much more awesome than the old one. For those of you familiar with the old KC180, you'll notice a lot of different design changes and improvements. The old KC180 had a triple belt drive system, but the distance between the 2 pulleys was only about this much. And the belts would tend to stretch. You'd have to make some very tricky adjustments on that thing, and it was a process, and I cover that in a couple videos because it is not the easiest thing to do. The new KC220 also has a really cool push bar that's hydraulically operated. I absolutely love that. So if it wasn't efficient enough, the new push bar, if there is material that's still within the work area, you just drive right over it, push it out of your way and off to the back end of the work area. Just super cool feature, man. And the thickness of some of the steel on this attachment is thicker than some of the armored vehicles I've been in. I mean, they built this thing super tough. I cannot believe the thickness of the metal on this. In fact, in talking with the design team and some of the engineers that designed this, they said from the very first prototype to number 14, which is this one, the weight doubled, meaning that they made this thing twice as tough as when they first started out. That's the thing about being the very first house in a 45 house neighborhood. Everybody has to drive past my house, and I feel like it's my responsibility to wave to everybody. Of course, it's great to have great neighbors, and I want to be that neighbor that the other neighbors love to have around. This new stump grinder, they have an absolutely awesome belt tensioning system built in that keeps the belt tension. So there's no more tricky alignments or anything else. And the belts are a lot longer. So now instead of the distance between pulleys of about this far, now we got this far. We have essentially the entire width of the attachment, and there's a tensioning pulley that always keeps the belts to proper tension, so that's never going to be an issue. So you're going to get a much greater increased time between belt changes. Longevity has been greatly increased in this new design. Now the KC220 has 9 sets of cutters versus the KC180's 8 sets, plus a higher disc rotational speed and a larger disc diameter. Now the new cutting head diameter is 22 inches, increased from 18 inches, and The wheel RPM is 1,300 revolutions per minute, increased from 900 RPM on the old design. So we're going to do some quick math and figure out the actual velocity of the new cutting disc versus the old one. So the diameter of the cutting wheel is 22 inches. We want to multiply that times pi, which is 3.1415926535893233846. But we're not going to use 20 decimal places. 3.14 is just fine. So each time the disc spins around one time, it travels 69.08 inches per revolution. Now we have 1,300 revolutions per minute, so now we have to factor that in. Now we have 89,804 inches per minute. Now we can convert that to inches per hour. We have to multiply that times 60. Now we can divide that answer of 5,388,240 inches per hour, divide that by 12 to get feet per hour, and then divided by 5,280 to get miles per hour. Well, I rechecked my math and I'm pretty sure this is correct. That means that the cutter wheel is spinning at 85 miles an hour. Now that does not include the extra diameter that the cutters add. You know what? Let me recalculate that using the cutters as the new diameter. Now we already know that the disc is 22 inches in diameter, and since I'm not going to unmount the disc to get the most accurate reading all the way across from the tip of one cutter to the tip of the other on the opposite side, we're just going to get a rough estimate here of the additional diameter that these cutters add. So from the edge of the disc to the cutter, it's just about 2 inches extra exactly, which takes the total diameter from 22 up to 26. So now we'll recalculate using 26 as a new number. So the new math, based on the new diameter of 26 inches, comes out to 100.5 miles per hour. That's how fast the cutters are spinning at 1,300 RPM. 100 miles an hour. So I was curious, I did a little bit more math, and for the old KC220, which has an 18-inch diameter disc that does not include the additional diameter added by the cutters, which is almost exactly 2 inches more for the radius, 4 inches more for the diameter. So for a diameter of 22 on the KC220 and 26 on the KC220, again, that includes the cutters, the speed, the tip speed on the KC220 is about 59 miles per hour compared to 100 miles per hour on this bad boy. That's pretty darn awesome. That's about a 70% increase in tip speed, guys. That is huge, man. My neighbors love me, man. I am not a huge people person, but I do appreciate being around other decent human beings. You treat other people with respect, and I'm gonna like you a whole lot. Anyway, we live in a closed neighborhood. It's not gated, but it's definitely closed, and it's a dead-end road, goes around a loop and comes back. In a few other episodes, I've shown some satellite aerial views of the house and the surrounding neighborhood. We're one of 45 homes. We are an HOA, believe it or not. Yes, we're an HOA. You do not get that impression when you look around my house here. We're surrounded by woods. It has more of that feel up in the circle, but me personally, I feel that we have the nicest location in the entire neighborhood, but that's just me. I love being surrounded by the woods, by the birds, deer, nature, all of it. I feel very at peace here. I'd say really the only advantage that the smaller, older KC220 has over the 220 is its small size. I can go places that I just couldn't go with the offset of the 220. That's the only thing that I can think of. The old KC220 also displaces those chips and material between the tractor and the stump. And when you're doing larger stumps, that pile of chips is covering the work that you're trying to do, makes it very difficult to see. So almost all the time, when doing some of the larger stumps, I'd miss a spot, or there would be an area that was just a little too high, and I wouldn't see that until I physically had to clear the chips, all of the chips away from the work area. So I would either use the bucket on the 3-point, which is super cool, but then I'd have to stop what I'm doing, turn around, back up, try to scoop them up. And even then, there's still some chips, so there's some handwork left. I'd also have my handheld blower, and I blow the chips away from the area, but still there would be high spots. And if I'm doing a stump grinding and a grading job, I'd almost always hit some of the stump that I left behind. The KC220 does not do that. Because of the way that this is set up, you're driving forward and backward across the stump. And you're making a pass in each direction, and it's displacing those chips off to the side, out of the work area, keeping the next pass completely clean. You can see everything that you're doing. I like that. I like that very much. What that does, it makes for a much more efficient process. Just super cool. Plus the larger cutting wheel, the faster rotational speed, all of it come together to create an attachment that is much more efficient than the old one. Since I already have the KC180, I'm absolutely going to hold on to it because, again, there are times where the small size allows me to get to places I just can't get the 220 in. So for you guys who are wondering, is the 220 better than the 180? Absolutely, I would say yes. The more time I have on this thing, the more I love it. This thing is absolutely awesome, and I feel very fortunate and very blessed that Ventrac sent this to me to test, and they've been very receptive with me when I would give them suggestions. In fact, I had this thing for 5 minutes, and they made a couple small changes on it for the better. So my suggestion to Ventrac is, the next time you have a prototype piece of equipment, just send it to me a lot earlier. And the development process will be a lot more efficient, I'm telling you. I put this equipment through its paces. I test this stuff hard. I work it hard because that's what I expect. I have a piece of equipment, it needs to put out, and it does. I'm still not sure when the KC220 is going to be in production. I don't know any of that yet. As far as I know, I'm the only one that has it. If you guys have any specific questions, please leave them in the comments below. I take the time to read them all, and I will respond, and I'll make a follow-up video to answer every single question.